to where the actual input, the actual source of production is now, and he was saying in 2000, was about 80% was something other than human labor. It is capital intangibles, and now it's galloping. It's galloping into that. And the people who own those means of production have incredible ability to make investments that will pay for themselves and earn tremendous growth. The capitalists that have that, they have the ownership. They're like the kings on the castle. Right. They own what is producing all the wealth. Everybody else is like picking up what can come dribble down to them through labor, through a job. They're racing to the bottom now, and the labor theory of value is enshrined in all of our institutions. The basic policy grounding statement for the United States is the Employment Act of 1946. That should be investigated as surely as the Communications Act of 1934 was investigated in terms of the changing reality. But they're distributing all income to people. The only legitimate way to get income is to have a job, to have a working. And the ownership of the technology and the ownership of what's actually producing the wealth, and it's going exponential, is in the hands of a tiny plutocratic class that we call capitalists. And why we let them get away with that, I don't know.
Can I say a good example of what you just said? Is if you own a Caterpillar, steam shovel, or dragger, you can dig up more earth, more coal, whatever, with one man and this capital investment in the steam shovel or the Caterpillar plow than 100 or 200 men can do with picks and shovels.
That's right.
You're right. So the power of owning the steam shovel or the Caterpillar bulldozer, they've even more power than 200 workers.
They've even got a
You have to make a distinction. You can't just say means of production. You have to distinguish what is man-made, what is capital input, what is technology, and what is raw materials, what is nature, what is natural resources.
Well,
natural resources.
Capital input into technology.
No. You're mixing up in a neoclassical way capital and resources. Resources, according to George, through a reform of taxation, resources are redistributed to everybody. Everybody is entitled to resources because why? If we don't have them, we die. If we don't have the air we breathe, we're dead. So everybody's entitled to resources.
What about land, Kai?
Well, land,
is it wrong for somebody to have a private property holding of land?
No, it's not. It's not. But he gives back to the community a user's fee for that land.
How much land could you conceivably own?
Any you want, any you can pay for, but there's no redistribution of ownership unlike communism. But what you don't do, any kind of labor or capital is not taxed. It's untaxed. So in a sense, Henry George is a complete no tax policy. The only thing that's being not taxed, but the user's fees being paid for, is natural resources. So what happens is people take care of natural resources very prudently and frugally. They're not wasted. Yeah? So they last long.
Is that cap and trade? Is this something like where we pay people for polluting and make the people that produce the pollution pay for it? Or is this related to 40 acres and a mule for anyone to go out and settle land? I don't understand how this works.
So you're attacking Al Gore and black people.
Not attacking anybody.
Yeah, it was. No, but how do you get education to happen if there's no taxation? How do you get education?
Well, two examples. Take Alaska.
By the way, the question we did. We took Alaska. You take $80 million. The question I asked was how you get education without taxes. That's what you suggested.
Or anything else.
Okay, in Alaska, if let's say all of us were citizens of Alaska, we would get, at the end of the year, we would get a couple of $1,000 rebate from the oil revenue. They're making so much oil, it's coming up their bazookas, so they're redistributing some of that surplus from the oil revenue back to the citizen.
With all respect.
Wyoming had a lot of natural gas deposits. It was in the Times 2 years ago. Yeah. So what happens is the legislature of Wyoming, they're not Georgians, but they're not stupid either. So they're saying if there's a company from out of state, out of the country coming in to exploit our natural gas, they have to pay a hefty tax, a hefty natural gas tax, which is redistributed to the citizen of Wyoming. Wyoming now has higher education, for free. Everybody in the country is going to Wyoming.
And what
They're
about
sending their
don't
kids,
they-
and the college
right.
professors, like in Sweden, like in Canada, like in other civilized countries, where education is not depending on your daddy's wallet, it's depending on your brains.
Yeah, yeah, and
One
do they
question.
have to pay anything for the destruction of the planet they polluting?
Wait a second.
Well, that's another
Where
issue.
is natural gas polluting the planet?
Natural gas? Natural gas says there's some oil pollution and coal pollution. Natural gas is the thing that's energy.
If you're paying for oil, a high, like a 90% user speed, you want to use oil as frugally as you can. If we're treating oil as externalities, as brain deadly, we have treated oil in the neoclassical period as externalities, then you blow it, and then you have a problem with the trash. We have a problem. We're the only species on the planet, according to a wildlife expert, we're the only species on the planet that befouls its own nest.
Yes.
As human beings.
For sure.
Now, if we are made to pay for that directly from the outset, whenever we use a natural resource, we have to pay for it. Capital and labor is not taxed, but we have to pay for any use of natural resources, so we're going to use it very frugally instead of blowing it into the...
One thing I'd ask you, Kai, is that, and it seems important, because it seems to me I see them talking about the natural resources belong to everyone.
Yeah,
Now, Kelso's the one who worked out the thing with the Alaskan pipeline.
okay.
The Alaskan pipeline was not a natural resource.
No.
The natural
That's
pipeline
capital.
that brought the oil
That's
to
technology.
the market
Yes.
was done, and they built a ownership pattern, corporate ownership stock of that pipeline capability.
But it destroyed the tundra and the
Never mind.
migration of the animals.
And because they have that corporate
No,
stock,
it didn't.
as is the case with people who own a piece of the action of corporate
He doesn't care about the
corporate
caribou
stock, they have income coming to them by the
They're not
fact
American.
that they own that stock and that thing that was made by human beings and is part of the capital. Get income from that. Only the people who are very, very wealthy get that. We don't have a capital ownership of of everything other than labor built into our system, so that people, because it has to all go through the employment process. The thing you can have a combine going across the Kansas field. It'll create 1 million bushels of wheat
Yeah.
on the land, and there's not even a driver. They got a robot doing it. It drives now, and they're still going to try and distribute income through this thing called the work ethic. It's so built into our consciousness, and they keep us so blinkered that we have no ownership of that, which is really the combine, which is producing the wealth that could give us income to live the life we want to do, rather than doing what the ones who set the template, who own all those assets, set for all of our institutions, our think tanks, our universities, everything else. They set the template, and we're all like serfs on a feudal estate. If you get a stream of income coming to people from the way things are actually being produced by an ownership state in those capital instruments, they would be liberated to do what it is they want to do, like maybe paint and do things that do works of civilization.
That's
That's
very much.
Kelso.
That's very much in line with Wittgenstein, who's on the board of our school. That's very much in line with Henry George. You cannot own nature because nature is the primary life condition of everybody.
But
So
they
you
do
cannot-
own it. Kai, they do own it. They have what they call
Well, then you
titles
pay
and
users-
deeds
you
and
pay-
mineral
okay,
rights,
you
and
pay-
they do own it. It
you
has
pay-
been
but
divided
that's-
up.
You have
Shouldn't be
users-
allowed.
Well, perhaps.
Take it away from them.
No, the
Well, I
George,
don't think that's
George has two
Cut their heads
recipes. George has
Shouldn't
two
be
recipes.
Guaranteed.
The Native
Let the
Americans
man
Yes,
talk.
yes.
said you're not buying and selling the earth or whatever part of it you want. It is our mother.
Chief
You know,
Joseph.
Thank you. You can. It's like, I mean, not even Hitler said, I sell my mother and I cut my mother into little pieces. The earth is all our mother, and we're all coming from there, we're all going back to there. So there's nonsense to cut it into little parts.
Well, why do we
Well,
allow
but George-
title deeds
George
and
has
pieces
two.
of
George has
property?
a two-pronged
Europeans had this idea when they wanted
Well,
to
let him
slaughter the
I
inhabitants.
asked you about education. The people in the desert in Africa don't have the oil line. The people in Alaska do. So the people in Alaska get educated. The people who are living in the desert in Africa get nothing. So they don't get educated.
Well, sometimes they capture a ship and get their heads blown up by his friends.
No. Natural resources are for everybody.
Okay.
So,
How do you convince the super rich that would be?
well, Well, there's a two-pronged strategy. The two-pronged strategy is one, you redistribute income through taxation of natural resources, 90%. 90%.
Who raises these taxes? How do you put these taxes into?
On a local level, there's some municipalities rate.
Through force.
Now,
Out of the barrel of the gun.
It can't be local, it has
now
to be
the
worldwide.
other strategy is you avoid an excessive monopolization. You avoid monopolies, also through taxation. You break up monopolies. And the reason, I mean, I dislike Roosevelt, I agree with you, I dislike Teddy Roosevelt as a swaggering imperialist. I dislike him completely. That's the foreign policy Roosevelt. If you look at the domestic Roosevelt, and he took a lot of his ideas from Henry George because he ran against Henry George. They both ran for mayor of New York City in the 1880s. And Teddy Roosevelt took a lot of ideas from Henry George, and the trust busting, the antitrust laws, the national parks, and the emphasis of nature, and the sort of
And the blizzard of 1888.
there's a social, the social.
What caused that?
I didn't hear. What
You're talking about a blizzard.
I mean, he's throwing out these stupid questions, blizzard, and then you're talking good economic theory.
Killed a lot of Republicans.
No,
I like
Scared all the
that.
Democrats?
the social justice Roosevelt of the domestic sphere, not the stupid swaggering carry the big stick. That's a moron. It's a
But
moron.
Kai, one more
San
time.
Juan Hill.
Is it? He said you should not have ownership of natural resources includes land.
Yeah.
Now, the natural resources are divided up in, at least as we look around, into titles and deeds.
Well,
and
the
it's
use of
owned-
it.
It's owned by individual people,
George is
including
not-
mineral rights.
George is
So
not
he
against-
seemed not to have been able to live with his precept, or what?
Wait, he's not against the ownership of that. He just says you have to, if you want to own a natural resources, you pay a user's fee to the community, and that user's fee is up to 90%. That's a lot of percent.
Say that again. Could you say that sentence again?
Canadian.
Let's say Tom
I'd
Brokaw,
see that.
or Ted Turner, they together own half of Montana.
Yeah.
Now, if they want to do that, they can do it, but
But that's because they're rich. If you start out rich, you own everything.
if you let me finish my sentence,
Yeah.
I can explain it. Now, if Brokaw and Turner have to pay 90% of the land value they own every year in taxes to the community, they're going to scratch their heads mightily, and they're going to think about getting rid of some of that land and say it's not worth it because we can't afford it.
How much
we
would
give
they
it
answer?
back to the community?
How much-
Saudi Arabia had to give 90% of the money, they took the oil out of the ground, the world would be a much better place.
Of course.
Well, they wouldn't give it to us.
No, they give it to the world. I'm saying
No,
that
they wouldn't
the
give it. Why would
idea
they
that
give it
all
to the
humanity
world?
owns all resources, and therefore we should have as much as we can.
I mean,
We
go
should
back
pay
to
90%
the-
of Saudi Arabia's wealth and not be a slave to their damn oil.
Think of the easiest example in the world. The resource we all need every minute is air.
You live near me.
If we get a multinational corporation, if we get private ownership of air that charges us a nickel every time we breathe,
Yeah.
and we run out of nickels, we're dead.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
see how stupid the
That-
idea
that-
of monopolization of resources
And does
is.
that apply to the
It's
rest?
like fascism. It's like defying the right to live.
Okay. What do you
How do you
think?
convince
What do you
wealthy
think of?
people? How do you convince the powers that be? How do you convince, if you want to, the Bilderbergers to like the weak will inherit the earth only when the wealthy give it to them. I mean, they're not going to like go kicking and screaming. They're going to set up disinformation.
Yeah,
they're going to give you the impression of
Yeah.
sharing. They're going to give you a little bit of water. They're going to give you some clean air.
Yeah.
But basically, you're still going to be a waste.
That's the way it's always been. It's always been a few
So
people
how are you going to
running.
change this?
Well, that's a question that we're trying to deal with there.
You
And
can't.
what do you think, Kai, as
This
you
is the
understand
game.
it, of what Mr. Kelso was saying?
Can't change.
Or maybe it's not fair to ask.
No, I think a lot of what Council says is good and right. As I said, we have people on the border who are schooling for Californians, and that's, we can work
I
very well together.
preempted your monopoly because I have a 3 hours, survival mask, which will keep me from getting
Flu.
flu and
Now,
also
how are the rich going to give up their...
particles out of my mouth. I have $30 worth of masks. This is the first time I ever wore one. I feel like I'm so fashionable.
It's rather good. I think it's
It
rather
is
well
actually
designed.
not the
It's got
German.
flair.
And
$3.
you can't catch any economic strategy with this.
I mean, somebody's making money. CBS on them for
No,
$3
how are the
a
rich
mask.
going to
For
give up their
$3
monopoly?
a package, they got God knows I run into
No, there's
something.
no reason for them to give it up because Ted Turner, for example, has this enormous buffalo farm. If you get enough buffalo and the profit from buffalo is big enough, he never has to give it up.
So we're not saying we're not political commissars, starting as political
Buffalo,
commissars, we're not saying we have to give it up.
profit.
If he can generate the revenue to pay 90% of the price of land,
Who
but
the
they
hell
can
is
build it
that?
every year,
90%?
I
But
asked
the
you to
person
say,
is, capitalists want this. That's why they supported Henry George, and that's why they support the Henry George school.
That's what the
It's
name
true,
is.
it's true. Okay, let's talk about capital. Let's talk about capital. Let's talk about capital.
okay,
We have been brainwashed for 120, 130 years by the neoclassical economists who destroyed classical economists, the categorization of classical economists. We have a three-factor economy. We have land, labor, and capital. Land means natural resources. Labor means human exertion. And capital is not what Marx says in stupidly misunderstanding Hegel. Capital and labor are engulfed in the to-the-death struggle, cutthroat to the death struggle of two antagonistic factors.
Most-
Yes, wait. Capital is nothing but yesterday's labor, last year's labor, last week's labor. That's labor put away for the results of labor put away for a rainy day. It's your stock. And you think we're thinking of capital in the sense of financial capital? No, it's
no,
productive capital.
no,
But we
real
need,
capital.
you guys may not,
Yeah.
but the ordinary person. So we don't want money, and finance is an auxiliary means to aid production, to aid trade, to aid exchange, to create social justice. It's not there to create monopolies.
Most people do not say land, capital, and labor. Most people say capital and labor.
Exactly.
Because the land has been bought.
There's
the land
one
is
of them,
another
but they also
resource.
say human capital. So in other words, they're saying you and I we're their capital. There's this film by Werner Herzog, this grizzly guy, this grizzly expert who runs after grizzly bear and for 20 years observes this grizzly bear. And after 20 years, the grizzly bear fucking ate him.
Well, it's
So,
not the same one.
wait.
It's a different grizzly bear.
So, okay.
Yeah,
it's
it was a different
reason-
one, an unfriendly one.
No,
It
what
was
it
a
meant,
capitalist grizzly bear.
No,
no, but what it meant was, what it meant
I
was,
think it
this
was social
grizzly bear,
democrat.
this grizzly bear was sitting there thinking all the time, there goes my breakfast. So that's, if we accept the term natural capital and human capital, it's a fudging of the categories. You don't understand anymore what's going on. You're twisting your mind into a pretzel. If we're saying natural capital, that means for some charismatic entrepreneur, the world is his or her oyster. And that means you and I, if we accept the term human capital, we are their slaves.
Well,
and that's unacceptable. That's not
Harold, just
democratic.
one quick
Yeah,
sentence.
sure.
I want to thank you for this enormously. This is one of the most exhilarating discussions I have ever seen in this place, and it's because of you and this simple.
And this man,
and I have to leave because it's 9:30. But
I never heard of Henry George, and I find his ideas very interesting. They span both left and right, and I certainly am interested now in reading and learning more.
Go on the website.
I have to go too, but I know this is public, okay? I'm gonna duck out.
No, but isn't
Very
capital,
similar, man. I'll tell you, it's very
creation of
Very
capital,
smart.
isn't it for the purpose
That's my
of
thing.
stealing the value of the labor of the worker?
Good too. Two women
That's
complimented
Mark's
me on the way
idea.
here. One woman to wear a multi-cap. I think it's a woman's cap.
Looking great, man.
For the purpose of stealing the value of the labor?
I told you, I took the early courses at the Henry George School in 1960.
I have a leak in my apartment.
1950.
I gotta clean the place up.
You take the fly, take
The creation of money
Take
is
the,
for the purpose of stealing the
Jerry?
value of the labor.
did you take
You
the
could say, well,
print
then
out?
they unionize and they fight very hard to
Jerry,
get
did
more
you
money
take the print
for their
out?
labor. And then you fucking devalue the
Randolph.
value of the dollar.
Did you take the print out?
You let them unionize, you let them fight for a higher wage.
I printed out
You
that
devalue
thing. I printed it out myself. I have this
No,
already.
currency.
you don't have that.
And
Oh, you have it all.
they're screwed again.
So
the purpose of
currency
is to steal the
Let me have
value of
another
the
one. Let
labor.
me have another one.
The way it's done now, it's
Because I printed this out.
Okay.
Because I had this one.
And I totally understand, I completely
You got your
understand.
DVD. All right, thanks for coming, Mo. It's good to see you.
So he understood it intuitively.
No,
Study on his own.
when he lived and he was exploited and he studied some of it on his own and he tried to make it. And practice and the theory of the
I do videos. So if you have something that
Sounds reasonable. In other words, it was originally called a corded zither. So when you but then right, I can't play that. This is limited to a few chords. So this is a song. For fear the hearts of men are failing. For these are latter days we know. The Great Depression now is spreading. God's word declared it would be so. I'm going where there's no depression. To lovely land that's free from care. I'll leave this world of toil and trouble. My home's in heaven, I'm going there. At dark hour of midnight nearing, tribulation time will come. The storm will hurl a midnight fear, and sweet lost millions to their doom. That bright land, there'll be no hunger, nor from children crying for bread, no weeping widows and no struggle, no shrouds, no coffins and no dead. I'm going where there's no depression, to the lovely land that's free from care. I'll leave this world of toil and trouble. My home's in heaven, I'm going
Sounds like lottery.
It sounded good to me. I didn't hear much of it. You definitely played better than you
Woody
talked.
Guthrie.
I didn't even heard me. What's wrong with those people?
It's on the tape, brother. Don't worry, it's on the tape.
Do you hear me, friend? My friend, I said you played better than you talk.
All right. Yeah.
play better than you listen.
So long, Randolph. Be well.
Good to see you
Stay
guys.
out of trouble.
What,
if
you
you
know
can.
him or those guys?
Yeah, but
Oh, okay. Because I would have talked to him.
That was beautiful.
That sounds really good.
What's
What
that
you
one?
were saying?
What's that one you played for me the other night? That one you played when you sing with your son?
Oh,
What is that one?
that's another Carter family song.
Carter.
See, I gotta remember it. There's a dark and troubled side of life. There's a bright sunny side too. Though we meet in the darkness and strife,
music's good. Yeah, that's good. I still don't think that's it. What's the one that you had on tape and the boy was singing with you and your wife was singing in the background?
Oh, the one I wrote?
Yeah, was that the one you wrote? Yeah, that's the
About
one.
going down to Virginia and singing at the Carter Hall?
That's the way you sang it there. But you had it on, it's out on YouTube now. It's
It's
great.
on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a great talk with her the other day. You're a lucky fellow.
Me and my dear son of me, we sang at the Carter Hall. We had an enjoyable time there, if the truth could ever be told. We sang both of our hearts out. We sang for the love and the joy. We sang for the love of the Carters, both me and my little boy. We sang harmony.
That's it?
Together we sang of the love.
Yeah.
We sang harmony to the moon and stars above. We sang harmony, and no one can doubt that it's true. We sang harmony for Dale and Rita and you. We got to Bristol, it was about 2 o'clock. We sang a song of the Carters, where the old hat factory was not. We sang in front of the mural about my Quinch Mountain home, and rode the A.P. Carter Highway to the Carter family fold. We sang harmony, together we sang of the love. We sang harmony to the moon and stars above. We sang harmony, and no one can doubt that it's true. We sang harmony for Dale and Rita and you. When I am singing, I'm a feeling of ecstasy, and that feeling is double when my son sings with me. There is no feeling finer than anything I have tried, for it is a feeling of loving that comes from deep inside. We sang harmony, together we sang of the love. We sang harmony to the moon and stars above. We sang harmony, and no one can doubt that it's true. We sang harmony for Dale and Rita and you.
That's good stuff, man.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's
So where are you teaching, and where can I hear more of what you were saying?
Yeah.
Go on our website.
Give him the card. It's the Henry George School on 30th Street. Christine Luce?
I'm Kai. What's your name?
Richard.
Nice to meet you, Richard.
Oh, you turned it. Oh, that's
Our website is henrygeorgeschool.org.
And
That's
you
on
were
that
saying that
page.
he ran for mayor of New York City?
Twice. In 86, 1886 and 1897. And he ran against the guy from Tammany Hall in 86 and against the young Theodore Roosevelt. And the rest of his life, and he beat Roosevelt. It was a three-way race, and they said that because he was running on a labor ticket, union ticket, the ballot boxes with Henry George's names were found in the Hudson. So the cheating in an election is not an invention of Florida 2000.
They found what? Who? Him?
Not him. The ballot boxes. With
They didn't have Diebold yet.
And then after that, did he stay in politics?
Well, he went all over the world. He was like Harold. He was a great communicator. He didn't have cameras and stuff. He was a riveting speaker. he convinced young Bernard Shaw in London, and Shaw heard him, and Bernard Shaw says, Henry George made a man of me. He made me aware of the economic issues.
He was a major figure then. Major figure, yeah. I don't quite understand, but I want to.
And Tolstoy, if you look at War and Peace, you look at Resurrection, you look at Anna Karenina, there are pages and pages, hundreds of pages where Tolstoyan characters are debating Henry George, and he brought out Henry George's works in Russian, he wrote a preface and so on. So, George was just...
Yeah, because I don't know if it's Henry George who has the clarity or you.
No, Henry George. Henry George.
Yeah?
I mean, I've taught that stuff now for the better part of 20 years. I used to be a journalist, and I've ran other schools and stuff, but Henry George is a genius. I mean, I used to run language schools, and I used to use Henry George's English style, just as, you know, you have King James Version of the Bible, you have William Shakespeare, maybe you have Conan Doyle, and that's as good as it gets as far as language is concerned, English language, and Henry George is right up there.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle?
Yeah.
It was his birthday yesterday.
Oh yeah, you're right. 2 days ago. Today's the 24th. Today is Emerson.
Emerson's birthday?
What a great minds. Emerson and Thoreau are like precursors of Henry George. We have a course. We have a Emerson course. We have a Thoreau course.
And they had a little problem with each other.
Sure did.
What are you doing in there? What are you doing out there?
What are you doing in Walden Pond?
Yeah. I know very little, but I remember some of those days.
Yeah.
So, Kai, what do you think about what Obama's doing, and Geithner and Paulson and all that stuff, and what they're doing now? And what do you think the prospects are?
I think we're not out of the woods yet. I think it's going to get worse.
Yeah, well, somebody said things are going to get worse before they get worse.
Worser. Worser.
I'm not a doom and gloom guy, but it's to say that just in printing money we can get rid of all the economic illnesses. There's a structural flaw. Henry George, he left home when he was 14. He was fed up. He went around the world twice on a ship. He jumped ship in San Francisco, went to the gold rush. Fortunately for us, he didn't find a nugget. He didn't find a nugget. Had he found gold, he would have retired a fat ass and never written a book. So he was starving, and he ran away with a girl and married her. And when she came down with her second child, he was so desperate because he was unemployed. He ran out into the street and hit up the first guy who came in San Francisco and said, "Give me $5." I mean, if you go out in the street and somebody hits you up for $5 today, that's a lot of money. Are you going to give him that? Like 100 years ago,
that was
$5 was real money.
Yeah.
And the guy looked at him and he said, "What do you need it for?" I said, "I'm starving. My wife's coming down with the second child." And so the guy had a heart and he gave him the $5. And he says, Henry George says, if he hadn't given me the bucks, I would have killed him. So he had that experience of destitution. Mm-hmm. And he was riding out with a friend into the hills of San Francisco. And he's looking around. There's some cowboy coming along. He says, who does this land belong? Who does this land belong to? And the guy says, who he meets on the horseback, he says, "Oh, it belongs to some guy, some rich landowner." Yeah. And so he realized up to the horizon, cows on the horizon as small as mice, it all belonged to one man. And it was like an epiphany. It hit him, and he said, "We're never going to get anywhere if we allow this kind of monopolization of land and resources." And why is it that the United States used to be called, in the 19th century, the United States was the land of unlimited opportunity. And that was literally true. As long as,
there was something to steal.
Genocide and the genocide of the indigenous population, that's one thing. The American Indians had another perspective of land, another perspective of nature. Much better actually than we. Mm-hmm. But they also were populating this continent very sparsely. Now, as long as the immigrants came from other, not totalitarian, but monarchical systems to the United States, you had the Homestead Act. You could ride out in the morning. You ride out east, stake your claim, follow the sun, ride out east in the morning, ride out south at noon, stake your claim, ride west in the evening, stake your claim, and whatever you staked, if you cultivated it, provided you cultivated it, that was yours. You didn't have to pay for it.
160 acres.
Exactly. So 40 acres and mules, all this. So there was enough for everybody. There was more than enough for everybody.
Yeah.
Now in the 1880s, when George wrote and when he ran against Roosevelt, that was around the time when the last free land was bought.
Yeah.
So
The Homestead Act had closed down.
Exactly. And from that point on, U.S. stopped being on the purely material plane, stopped being a land of unlimited opportunity. And Henry George was that. He saw that, and he worked his way after he didn't find gold in the Yukon Valley. He came back. He did odd jobs. He became a printer. He worked his way up to an apprentice editor, and then editor-in-chief. And he, in 25 years, saw San Francisco develop from a fishing village, from a couple of mud huts, in a gold rush area into a vast trading center for the whole Pacific Rim. So in other words, he had an accelerated motion history lesson that normally never happens. To develop a civilization usually takes hundreds of years, thousands of years. He saw that in 25 years. From nothing, from practically the Neanderthal stage to a fairly evolved civilization. And he not only saw that, he had the brains to write it down. And so he basically gave us a blueprint. How can you make a civilization grow and prosper for everybody with social justice, and how you bring it down? He says you bring it down through monopolies.
From what?
Through monopolies. If you allow monopolies, you bring it down. You killed it. You killed it.
Yeah, it was good. The robber barons were there. Yeah, I don't know. I got that Homestead Act thing and everything, but I take heart from what's going on. The economy's been hit upside the head like a 2x4. And they really are questioning it also. It's really up for grabs. But I'm up to, for whatever it's worth. I don't see things quite the way, I want to understand George better. But the idea of land and natural resources, and that would be like a break point. But I see it more like off the ownership and then the labor theory of value. I really attack the labor theory. I think it should be questioned because it's a wool being pulled over our eyes that the work ethic, all of those things are going to be. But I think as far as the policy is concerned, and I think they're moving in the right direction, they're going to end up, Kai, what do you think? They're going to end up...
You're talking Obama now.
No, I'm talking, yeah.
Well, Obama is doing...
what's going on.
Obama is using Keynes. Obama is saying deficit spending. And there's something okay about this, but you can't... Well, are we going to spend ourselves out of the recession, out of the depression? You said that earlier. The main thing is not the money. Let the money men go where they want to go. The main thing is put food on the table, put meat and potatoes on the table, put people back to work. That's the main thing.
Well, the point is,
and make sure they don't lose their homes.
Well,
this land is our land. Nobody should be evicted. Nobody. Excuse me.
Why put people back to work?
One thing you said about poverty. The poor will always be with us. That's a misquote of the Bible. Henry George says, poverty is a man-made problem. It's not a natural law, and it's not a divine law.
Well, I said that the masses of people, the only thing they have as leverage is the value of labor.
Yeah, but their labor is diminishing. The input to production
then they're in trouble.
is diminishing.
They're in trouble. If that's true, they're in trouble.
And it's an outdated idea that we're going to distribute income to people through their job or labor.
Yes. We got to wait on the largesse.
Okay, but what are you going to do?
Well,
are you going to gas the unemployment?
Well, no, I think what you're going to get, what I'm suggesting,
he's going to give them money.
Where they're going,
and the value of the money goes way down if it's not based on anything.
What they're going to end up with, it's going to be about 4 or 5 months, I think, before they get there. They're going to establish what Kelso talked about and Adler, and they're going to put within the federal system next to the Federal Reserve Board, they're going to put in a thing called capital diffusion. Diffusion reinsurance
as opposed
corporation,
to monopolization,
which will be within the government, and it will be a reassuring of a casualty insurance industry that can deal with the various levels of risk in the economic order. It was all in the private sector with the swaps and derivatives. They tried. They were doing things. You had to write a contract in that way. But they'll do that. And where the dialectic is going to be between, so that the things that are safe and the things that are going to take care of the people, housing, and the things that are there will be within an area that will be both supply and demand will be there to be met, but then you're going to have a dialectic with risks when you get into venture capital. And there's going to be a distinction between the venture capital and the thing that is for the mass of the people. But it won't be based on the labor theory of value and distributed only by...
We don't have to be fixated on the labor theory of value, but what can be, you cannot have people be thrown out of a home. You cannot deprive people of the right to breathe.
Yeah,
that's an absurdity.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, I'm just saying the direction that it's going. It's look for the emergence or the language that is going to show the emergence of an institution within the federal substance of the United States as a mentor economy to the world called the Capital Diffusion Reinsurance Corporation. It's going to be built into the federal structure. It's going to emerge within the next 4 or 5 months.
I don't know Kelso as well as you do. I have some teachers who are Kelso experts, but the Kelso better has a recipe to avoid this kind of nonsense we had the last couple of years, subprime and the credit cards.
Well, that's
if he doesn't have it, then
we haven't had the capital diffusion reinsurance structure within the federal economy.
Obviously not.
And that's what's going to emerge. But I don't think you're going to be able to keep distributing income only by labor criteria or jobs. You're going to have. It is just like pulling the wool over our eyes to say the work ethic and all that.
But that's not what George says. George says you have to honor natural resources, and you have to honor people's rights to natural resources.
I don't understand that. The natural resources are owned now. I know they shouldn't be, but they are. They have title deeds. They have mineral rights.
But Harold, if you own the air that I breathe, you kill me. That's ridiculous. Is there a natural resource? Well, no. They in Bolivia. Bolivia forbid the people to collect rainwater. Yeah, they couldn't even. They didn't have enough money to survive with water. That's an obscenity. This kind of monopolism cannot be allowed.
Well, no, it's exactly the opposite. You shouldn't allow all the capital assets to be owned by a
and that's
tiny
what they're
class.
doing with Iraq was the land between the rivers. That's why we had to go in there, is to get the water. That's what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, is they're taking the water.
But if you're talking about property as theft, right, and then you're obviously getting back to redistribution of wealth, and who makes a decision?
There's constant redistribution of wealth from the workers and the poor to the few.
Define property. What is property? Is our natural resources property? Who made nature? Who made the air we breathe? Not the guy who owns it. Who made the water that Bechtel is selling? Not the Bechtel people. You have a right to ownership as the fruits of your labor, by the input of your human exertion, and by the input of your capital. You don't have the rights automatically to something that was there prior to you and that will be there after you, namely nature. Nature cannot.
But nonetheless,
it's a two-rate ownership system. You cannot allow absolute ownership of land. I mean, imagine the idiocy. Somebody has absolute right of ownership of a plot of land, and the guy's dead after 100 years, and then for the next 10,000 years, this is privately owned by this dead guy. This is ludicrous.
Well,
it presupposes physical immortality. When was the last time you made a physically immortal person?
System where people are not going to get income by their labor. That's all they talk about now, is creating jobs. Everything goes through that. It's wasteful. It's not in keeping with the way things are produced. They're going to have ownership of the capital instruments by which the capitalists get rich. Has to get to everybody, a stream of income. They can clear the market and live the life they want to lead without being a wage slave within the system that we are now.
Tax the robots.
Well, not tax the robots. Expand the ownership of the combine.
Well, you've got to
take the left nut on the combine.
The means of production cannot be monopolized in a few hands. That's fine.
But how do you take? Again, practically speaking, it's redistribution of wealth, taking power and ownership away from people. When you're talking about owning land, our nations are formed on the premise that our federal government, or the people within that constitutional government or fascist government, whatever kind of government you have, has established these borders of ownership.
So we need a world government. We need a world federation.
But listen, even if a country has this redistribution of wealth, it stops at its borders.
Well, that's what
unless
the
you
gentleman...
want to force those people on the other side of the border to adopt your ideology.
You need a national
genocide
federation.
would take over their land.
and expand yours.
It wasn't like part of World War II being fought against the commies and the whole notion of the spread of the red tie and
the Marxists.
Yeah, I mean, within a lot of countries,
Thank you.
Well,
like the
the guy who
Hungarians, the
left,
Lithuanians, the
Burmese
Estonians,
guy
get on the bandwagon
says
with
we
the
only
Nazis
go to war
because
to
they were
help
fighting
people.
the red tie, right?
Well, there was.
But that's a justification.
But
the
and he's
domino
talking
theory
about
of
how
stopping
we got
the
into World War
Vietnam.
II when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. I think we were at war with Japan. Economic warfare took place before.
With the embargo, yeah, we had an embargo against Japan prior to them attacking.
Economic warfare is just as devastating as the bombs.
Oh, yeah.
So they can't do that because we react to economic warfare all the time. And we cause economic warfare all the time.
Sometimes it can work. It depends if you can freeze people out. But
And
if other countries are going to trade with you, like in the case of Cuba or the case of Iran,
Economic warfare against Cuba.
But at
but
the
it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
at the
Who
national.
suffers? But who suffers? Castro doesn't suffer. Castro's got eight houses, lots of prostitutes,
The Cuban
lots
people.
of good food. The Cuban people.
And that's
Isn't
what's
he dying?
designed
But that,
against.
it was supposed to bring
done?
about a revolution within that country, and it
No, it
didn't
wasn't. It
happen.
was supposed to take over the resources of Cuba and to prevent the idea of socialized medicine from getting to any place else.
Well, sure. I mean, and the United States has whatever the United States hasn't been able to control, it destabilizes.
Yeah.
You know, and if you go.
What was the
through
purpose of the war in Iraq?
Chomsky's list
To
of
destabilize the Middle East.
280 something.
What was the
Protect
what was the
Israel.
purpose?
To protect Israel.
Oh, give me a fucking break.
Well,
Secure
okay.
the
That was
protect-
the Likud
Iraq
thing, the
was
neocons.
secure
they're
the
back in
resource of
power
oil.
now.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think Iraq was about Halliburton.
No, it was to destabilize the Middle East, so it would be necessary for endless war.
Do you know that
It would be the purpose.
Halliburton
It would be
owns
the
the company that does all the
Halliburton.
fueling- No, listen. Halliburton owns a subsidiary. Once they lost the oil rights, which they knew they weren't going to get because China was going to outbid them for it, right? China now has most of the oil rights, but Halliburton still has the contracts to develop those oil rights. But also Halliburton, a subsidiary of Halliburton, provides every meal to the soldiers there at $20 a pop.
Not that many
They
soldiers.
have widescreen TVs and Filipino waiters. They're all outsourced. They don't make their own beds. They don't fuel their own trucks. They don't do diddly shit. That's all outsourced to Halliburton. They make a fortune from this war. They were smart enough to realize, the military-industrial people, that if they couldn't get the oil, at least what we're going to do is we're going to make this war last as long as we possibly can, and
Bush is a
this for
genius.
everything
Bush
we
is a
can.
genius.
$21
What's her name?
a meal.
Karen Hughes.
$21 a meal, 3 meals a day, every soldier there.
That adds
Karen
up.
Hughes.
all up.
Karen Hughes said, "Mr. Bush, your job is to make people think you're a damn idiot, that you were caught unawares, that you are in a quagmire not of your own making." We needed a quagmire. You don't make money on a 6-day war. You make money on a quagmire. What happened when the solid rocket booster blew up because the O-ring froze? What happened to Morton Thiokol? They got $1 billion contract to redesign the O-ring.
Good deal.
You don't make a redesigned O-ring for $1 billion if everything went off perfectly.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
That's a metaphor.
So Bush his job was to look like a village idiot, to look like a bumpkin, to look like we were caught unawares.
So also the American
We had no
public-
idea the Soviet Union was going to collapse, and we're working on it for 75 years.
American
And then all of a sudden, we had no idea. I'm literally shocked that the Soviet Union imploded. Here, Mr. Gorbachev, another $400 million.
Yeah, I think it's an issue of like real. You know, I don't like to be one of those.
Fidel Castro
conspiracy
told me
theories,
that the
but-
two greatest betrayers of the working class
The Bilderbergers, I
were
think,
Gorbachev and
you know,
Yeltsin.
The Masons.
I would say Stalin.
You know,
No,
the-
I wouldn't do
the
that.
33
I wouldn't do that.
Masons,
How many
yeah,
people
that
did he
guy's
put in the
definitely got
Gulag?
something going on.
I think that's
I don't
Nazi
know.
propaganda.
You know, the skull and bones. It's a thing. I mean, there are these groups.
I still think the
There was a
fault lies
movie.
with the intellectuals.
There was a movie
We're not
called
coming back with an alternative.
Who's the control?
Yeah.
What, you know that film?
There's your money. Here's your money.
I think I played this game enough.
And then there came a lot of change, and so they rewrote the Communications Act. That was the basic policy grounding.
Now the basic
that
provided for community television.
Well, the point being is they had the act originally in 1934, and everybody related to that in terms of early development of communications and all that. And then they rewrote the act in 1996.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was just redone, and they made it, you know, and then there's
What
arguments.
happened in 96? How they
Well, never mind that. That's the point. But now when you come down to the questions of economics, we're talking about Henry George or economics or how is economics going to... They still don't have an answer in terms of what they're doing in Washington. And it's beginning to catch up with them. And it's a problem because they don't. But we do have, at the level of policy, a policy grounding statement for the United States economy in the realm of economics, not communications, but economics. And it is the employment, it was almost called the Full Employment Act. It's the Employment Act of 1946. And under this, it is written into and understood that we are going to distribute income to the people through jobs, through labor. And it is informed by the labor theory of value. And also, a tremendous array of bill of goods that has been sold to people under the work ethic. And the idea that you will work hard and you will get rewarded and all of that. And also has been, and that's all Mr. Obama talks about, is we're going to create for the people, we're going to create
6 million jobs, 4 million.
Yeah, we're going to create jobs, and they're going to measure unemployment and that kind of stuff.
Fortunately, they're all farm building jobs.
They're what, honey?
Farm building jobs.
Well, a lot of them are, and they have been. But the point is, they're going to be re-examining that bill. You're going to look for that. It'll be little things come out in C-SPAN or something. They're going to be re-examining the same way they re-examined the Communications
Don't
Act.
say the federal government has to provide jobs.
No, that is the national. The Employment Act of 1946 spells out that we will distribute income, and it reifies the belief that the only way anything is produced is through human labor, and human beings are wonderful things. Well, it was written into policy assumptions.
Policy assumption.
Yes.
But it doesn't have any laws right now.
Yeah, but you see, it's so enshrined now they don't even think about it. Because there are lots of ads they put on where they say the only way that is legitimate way to earn income is to work and to have a job. If you're not working, you know, and
what's the alternative?
Well, the alternative is a completely different way of distributing income to the people by giving them a stake in the ownership the same way the capitalists
making everybody a shareholder in the corporation of the United States.
Of the economy.
Yeah, but it's making everybody a shareholder in the economy of the United States.
Yeah, as a vehicle of income distribution rather than jobs, because as Lord Keynes said, we are being confronted with massive technological unemployment. We're being put on the good. This little chart shows that one. This little chart.
Well, the world is mostly made out of worker bees, right?
Well, I don't know about bees, but
worker drones. I mean, the majority of people get displaced by
that chart. That represents reality in a very real sense in terms of the input between labor on one side and everything else. Capitalism on the other.
But
the vast majority.
I know you're not advocating destroying all machines and going back.
Not
to
at all. Quite the opposite.
But the means of production.
The way people get money is what I want to say.
Oh yeah. But of course, who owns the robots? Who makes the robots? Who develops them?
It should be.
Who owns MIT? Who?
Right.
You know,
it's all, well, that's a different chart, young man. That's the one that follows this one. This is the chart of the ownership. That's the chart of the ownership of the American economy and its mentor to the world. It was 5% owned everything. They had a bump up with the Homestead Act, and there's virtually all capital assets, and the production is 90% of capital assets are responsible for production. 10% is labor. All, intellectual and physical. And the capital assets are all owned by about 5% of the population all around the world. They're in the political economy. They live in, you know, and the people, all they can think about is, can I get a job on your plantation, master? and do what I'm told? Or can I go in your line and turn nuts or sew something for some
Like
women?
this, one of the problems that existed in Japan as a fighting force during the Pacific conflict was it was two families that owned Japan at the time. Yeah, one of them is that. But they're clans in a sense. Two huge families basically in Japan. One army, one the navy. Right? And like our own army and navy during World War II, they were fighting for glory.
Yeah.
You know, the whole battle between, Patton and, Montgomery, the battle that goes on between for glory, right? The fact that we had to allow the Russians to take Berlin first, it's like a big controversy. Patton wanted to take Berlin first. Russia there got kicked out of office, lost his gig, right? Transferred to the Philippines because, or resigned because they were going to transfer because he wanted to take Berlin. They said, no, the Russians, because that was part of the deal, right? For the Russians to arrive there first. Anyway, but Japan, those same families are in power and they compete within this given economy, this
Well, it's the
cooperation.
same here. It's the same in every economy in the world. There's a few people who own it.
Yeah,
That's why we love to bring the Japanese king to the place.
I think we had to.
Because it was
I
westernized.
think we had to. Yeah.
No, he's the guy.
Oh, the guy now.
Half the emperor.
Yeah.
Get rid of him. Shoot him.
But see, I think we're going to have an alternative, but it's going to have to be an alternative. We're not going to have the luxury of cutting off the heads of the sons of bitches who don't learn the world.
A
A lot of people would like to do that.
What they seem to not like, just as much as talking about distribution of wealth and labor and Marxism, what they also don't like is to be exposed.
Well,
They really don't like their picture taken.
I really think we should not put the blame or things in terms of them.
It is them, though.
No, I really don't think so.
It's a few families.
You know where I think the problem is with us?
There'll be
No,
a lot
and
of
by
groups
us,
that
by
will
us,
lie.
by us, I mean intellectual. Intellectual.
No, you can get just as many intellectuals that
Everybody
willingly
else-
work for these
No,
cows.
I say it's more the intellectual. Where the hell are the big thinkers? There's no thinkers now. And I mean, they're not
Want to
looking
be
at.
killed and they want to be tortured first.
Well, no, but that's where I think the blame is.
Well, the intellectuals are working on different things. They're writing books.
Well,
on
they've been
Roosevelt,
co-opted for one thing.
but they're also writing books on.
Remember, all those think tanks are the one group owns all the assets. 5%. You call them Illuminati, Trilateral, whatever you want. They own everything. They set the template. Okay, the template, the institutions, the universities, the grants, the think tanks. They set the template, and then people come in as they can fit in, sycophant to that template. They set the template, but they do not have the vision, nor should they have the vision.
Well, they
The
have.
vision should be coming from intellectuals, independent intellectuals, and the people that can
They're not going to
resonate.
get. They're only
Yes,
going
they're
to
going
get.
to. It's going to start emerging, Ron, in about 4 or 5 months. It's going to start
I'd
emerging.
like to. I'll be around.
I think it will. I think it's about 3 or 4 months we've got before they're going to start copping on to it. And it's going to be coming out of Washington, too. You can start watching the language of Mr. Gardner and Mr. Paulson and that kind of thing.
Well, I love
and
the-
even it'll get to the president.
I love the president's use of transparency all the time.
Well, that's what I
was
think.
true.
So I think things maybe we're heading for a
If only it
gigantic,
were true.
a gigantic renaissance, and it's going to begin by next Thursday because we're
Okay,
going to
right,
make a
Thursday,
program.
right. How about Wednesday
We're gonna
and a
make-
half?
I can't do Wednesday.
Listen,
and a
wait a
half.
second.
Can't do Wednesday and a half.
Let me explain something to
If
you.
this gentleman does a program, you got to get him to a song.
He did.
ACAP.
We're going to. I go definitely.
He's a good singer.
He's
ACAP.
beautiful.
ACAP.
His dad is Professor Irwin Corey.
Oh, really?
Get the heck. You sound
Yeah.
like him. I was going to say that.
Right, so that's what I'm going to be explaining in a half a minute. If
All
we
right,
got-
if you can get a word in edgewise.
Right. So
You really-
have
that
to
really
short
was your
say-
pops?
Let me
Let me have a word. Let the man have a word.
Let
for
me
a
say
minute.
something that
I'm
might,
excited.
might be able to figure it out from this thing
Yeah,
I'm about
right,
to say.
right.
ACAP.
Yes.
This organization that was
Yeah.
supposedly this evening,
Yeah.
right? I have a 12-step program.
Yeah.
One step forward, 2 steps back.
ACOC.
ACOC stands for.
ACOC. Adult Children of Comedians.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's
Okay,
really
first
good.
step. You must
I'll
realize.
take the road. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kai. I'm going to try and
Thank
understand
you.
you more.
What do you want?
And I want to say,
have to have decaf because
that's fine, whatever.
Otherwise,
things-
it interferes with my anti-seizure medication.
Two things I wanted to explain, say, Kai, before you walk out the door. One is two things look for, and I think 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna look for the language of Geithner and all those
Diffusion,
things.
diffusion.
No, it's gonna be
Capital diffusion.
there's gonna be an understanding of the establishment of an institution called the Capital Diffusion Reinsurance Corporation. Take that handout I gave, take it. But that's the other, and the other thing that they're gonna examine, like they did, they examined the Communications Act of 1934
Okay.
as a policy grounding. Communications is the DNA.
Yeah,
And
I
they're
just
going
wanted
to
read
investigate,
the
you're gonna see
1937
the basic policy grounding statement for the United States economy is the Employment Act of 1946.
Oh, really?
That's gonna start coming into the dialogue to be
But that
revamped
was
or
your boss.
restarted.
I look for
That
it.
that will
You should
will
have a
not
discussion on it.
accept,
You should
will
have a
not
discussion on it.
accept
Yeah, all right, so these two
the labor
bitches
theory of
are-
value which informs virtually all economics.
still alive?
I should
Okay.
give you some passages, I
Are
should
you
give you
kidding
some
me?
passages how Henry George changes and improves the labor theory of value.
Fine, send me links.
I will.
Okay. And I'm, because I'm trying to understand, I know he's a really, really, really good guy.
Nice meeting you. See
But that's what you can look for. Take the things,
you next time.
the handout.
I got it.
You gotta go on, brother.
I got the copy.
You're a good spokesperson for the cause.